railway station was alive with its usual chaos. The air trembled with the constant whistle of trains, the clang of iron wheels against rusted tracks, and the impatient chatter of travelers rushing to their destinations. Vendors shouted about tea and roasted nuts. Children tugged at their mothers' hands. Coolies dragged heavy luggage across the platform. Life, in all its hurried glory, pulsed through the station. But amid all this noise, on a worn-out wooden bench near the edge of the platform, sat an old woman. She was small, fragile, almost invisible to the rushing crowds. Her hair had long turned the color of snow, thin strands escaping from the edge of a faded scarf. Her wrinkled face bore the marks of countless seasons, lines carved not just by time, but by sorrow. Her hands, trembling and frail, clutched a little cloth bag. Inside were the same few belongings she carried every day: a small brass container of water, a pack of stale biscuits, and a folded photograph so old its edges had begun to tear. Her eyes, oh, those eyes. They were tired, yes, but not empty. They scanned the arriving trains with an intensity that made strangers pause for a second. In her gaze was a strange blend of pain and unshakable hope, as if she were searching for a face she had not seen in decades, but could never forget. The passengers walked past her as if she were part of the station itself, like the benches, like the flickering tube lights, like the peeling posters on the wall. Some had grown used to seeing her every day, while others noticed her only once, shook their heads, and forgot. But she remembered. She remembered everything. The station had become her world. She knew its rhythms better than anyone. She knew the 8 a.m. train always arrived 5 minutes late, that the tea maker near the corner stall hummed the same tune every morning, that the stray dog lying near the tracks barked only when the night train thundered in. But while others came and went, she remained. She was the station's one permanent passenger, a traveler with no ticket, a soul with no destination except one. Every day she sat on that bench from sunrise till the last train of the night, her eyes searching, her lips whispering silent prayers. To the world, she was a mystery. Some called her the crazy old lady of the station. Some pitied her. Children sometimes giggled and threw pebbles near her feet. A few kind souls offered her tea, which she accepted with a weak smile. But no one truly knew her story. If you asked her why she was there, she would reply softly, almost in a whisper, "I'm waiting. My son promised he would come back for me. This is where he told me to wait." And that was all she would say. No explanations, no arguments, no doubts. Just faith. Her shawl was patched in many places, worn thin from years of use. Her slippers were cracked, barely holding together. The cold winds made her shiver, but she never complained. In her fragile hands, she often held the photograph from her bag. It was faded now, the ink nearly gone, but the outline of a young boy's face could still be seen. She would look at it, smile faintly, and then tuck it back carefully, as though it were the most precious treasure in the world. Many nights, when the platform grew quiet and the last of the vendors packed up their stalls, she would talk to herself, or perhaps to him. Her voice was so soft, it almost blended with the rustle of the night air. I'm still here, my son. You told me to wait, so I'm waiting. I know you'll keep your word. Mothers always know. The cruel irony was that the world around her never stopped moving. Trains came in, trains left. Passengers rushed with urgency. Families reunited. Lovers said their tearful goodbyes. Strangers exchanged hurried glances. Every platform moment was someone's beginning or someone's ending. But for her, time had frozen. The day her son left was the day her clock stopped ticking. From then on, every second of her life was simply a repetition of waiting. In a world where people chase deadlines and destinations, there was one soul who sat still. In a place built for departures and arrivals, there was one traveler who never boarded a train. And in a life where people forget their promises, there was one mother who remembered and kept waiting. The old woman at the station was not waiting for a stranger. She was waiting for her only son, the boy she had raised with her blood, her sweat, her entire existence. And so begins her story, a story of sacrifice, a story of hope, a story of a mother whose love refused to die, even when the world had already buried it. That bench, that station, and that endless wait were only the ending of her journey. To understand why she waited, we must go back. Back to her younger days, when she was not just an old woman on a bench, but a mother full of dreams, a woman who fought against the world for her child. And so, the story takes us to her past. Before she was the old lady at the station, she was simply a mother, young, strong, with hands that never stopped working, and a heart that never stopped giving. Her story began in a tiny village, far away from the noise of trains and stations. She lived in a small mud house with a broken wooden door and a roof that leaked during the rains. Life had never been kind to her. Her husband had left soon after their son was born, disappearing into the shadows of the city and never returning. But she did not cry. She did not complain. Instead, she looked at the tiny baby in her arms and whispered, "I will be enough. I will be mother and father. I will be your world, my child." From that day, her life became a battlefield. At dawn, while the village still slept, she would be out in the fields, cutting grass or collecting firewood. By noon, she worked in other people's homes, scrubbing floors, washing clothes, carrying heavy pots of water from the well. At night, she stitched clothes under the dim light of a kerosene lamp, her fingers pricked and scarred from the needle. Every coin she earned was stretched thin. Some days there was only one meal, and she would pretend she wasn't hungry so that her son could eat more. When he asked, "Mama, aren't you hungry?" she would smile and say, "No, my child, mothers don't get hungry." Her neighbors often pitied her. Some even mocked her. But she never let their words touch her. Her only focus was her son. While other children in the village worked in the fields or roamed the streets, she dreamed of something different for her boy. She wanted him to study, to escape the chains of poverty that had bound her entire life. Each morning, after finishing her chores, she would take his little hand and walk him to the village school. The boy wore a faded uniform, stitched and restitched a dozen times, but his smile was brighter than the sun. When the teacher demanded fees, she worked extra hours, washing more clothes, grinding more wheat, cleaning more courtyards. She never let the burden show. "Study well, my son," she told him every night. "Books are your wings. They will take you where my tired feet never could." Her son adored her. He would come home after school, throw his little arms around her neck, and say, "Mama, one day I'll build you a big house. You won't have to work anymore. You'll sit like a queen." She would laugh softly, brushing his hair back. "I don't need a palace, my child. Your smile is enough." But deep in her heart, she cherished his promises. They gave her strength when her body ached, when her stomach growled with hunger, when her hands bled from endless labor. The villagers watched her sacrifices with mixed feelings. Some respected her strength. Others shook their heads, saying, "What's the use? Children grow up and forget their parents." But she never believed them. Her faith in her son was unshakable. She carried his dreams like sacred prayers, believing he would lift them both into a brighter future. At night, when the boy was asleep, she often sat by the small window of their hut, looking up at the stars. She whispered to them as if they were guardians of her secret hopes. "Keep my child safe. Let him fly higher than I ever could. Let his life be brighter than mine." Sometimes tears slipped down her face, but she always wiped them away before he could see. She never wanted him to know the weight she carried. Years passed. The boy grew tall, his shoulders broad, his eyes filled with ambition. He loved his mother deeply, but he also longed for more the city opportunities, a chance to prove himself. When he told her, "Mama, I want to go to the city. I want to work to earn, to make your dreams come true," her heart trembled. Part of her wanted to keep him close, to never let him go. But she looked at him and realized her sacrifices had been for this very moment. She packed his small bag with trembling hands, folded his old clothes neatly, and gave him her only savings, a handful of coins wrapped in cloth. On the morning of his departure, she held him tightly at the station. Her eyes brimmed with tears, but her voice was steady. "Go, my son, make a life for yourself, but don't forget me, and don't forget this place." He hugged her and whispered in her ear, words that burned themselves into her soul. "Wait for me here, Mama. When I return, I'll take you with me. We'll have a new life together. Just wait for me at this station." Those words became her heartbeat. Those words became her reason to wait. And so the boy left, The train carried him away, and she stood on the platform long after it had vanished, her eyes locked on the tracks. She didn't know then that her life had changed forever. She didn't know that the promise made that morning would chain her to the station for the rest of her days. But she waited, because mothers always wait. The old lady's heart was a treasure chest of memories, each one tied to her son. Though the station had become her home, her real world existed in those flashbacks, those living moments that never aged inside her me. She often remembered the days when her boy was small enough to fit in her arms. The sound of his laughter still echoed in her ears, soft, pure, like the ringing of little temple bells. When the rains came, their hut would leak, but instead of crying, the boy would splash in the puddles, laughing as if the world were made of magic. She would scold him gently. "You'll catch a cold, silly child." But in truth, his happiness warmed her heart more than any fire. At night, when the thunder roared, he would run into her arms, burying his face in her chest. She would whisper lullabies, her voice soothing his fears until his tiny breaths became steady in sleep. They had so little, yet together they felt rich. A single piece of bread, torn into two, always tasted like a feast when they ate it side by side. There were days when she returned home with blistered feet, her back aching from carrying loads too heavy for her frail frame. But the moment her boy ran to her, wrapping his little arms around her waist, the pain vanished. He would often massage her tired hands with his small fingers, saying, "One day, Mama, I'll take care of you. You'll never have to work again." And she believed him. She believed every word because he was her only truth. She remembered how proud she felt the first time he read aloud to her. The letters that danced on a page were mysteries to her, but to him, they were keys unlocking new worlds. He would sit beside her at night, reading stories from old, tattered books borrowed from school. Sometimes he added his own imagination, twisting tales into adventures that made her laugh. For her, his voice was sweeter than music. She didn't need the world's luxuries. Her son's growing mind was her wealth, his dreams her fortune. Every small promise he made became the foundation of her hope. "Mama, one day I'll buy you shoes so your feet won't hurt. Mama, I'll get you a golden bangle. You'll wear it and look like a queen. Mama, we'll leave this hut. I'll build you a big house with windows that shine." She never asked for these things, but hearing them filled her with strength. She would smile, nod, and say, "I know you will, my child." Among all her memories, one moment replayed endlessly. The day he left for the city. She could still feel the weight of his embrace, the warmth of his tears against her cheek. She could still hear his words as clearly as if he stood before her. "Wait for me here, Mama. I'll come back, I promise." Those words became her heartbeat. Every dawn she woke with them. Every dusk she rested with them. Now, as she sat on the cold platform, she often drifted back to those days. She would watch other children laughing, tugging at their mother's hands, and her eyes would soften with longing. She imagined her son among them, still small, still hers. When the trains whistled, she sometimes closed her eyes and pretended that he was stepping down from the carriage, running toward her with open arms. For a fleeting second, she allowed herself the luxury of that dream, only for the cruel emptiness of reality to follow. Her mind was a fragile bridge between then and now. Then her son's laughter, promises, embraces. Now the endless wait, the cold station floor, the faces of strangers who never looked twice at her. Yet she endured it all because love anchored her. Her memories weren't just moments of the past. They were the food that kept her alive, the fire that kept her from turning to ash. Even as the years carved lines into her face and silver into her hair, her faith remained untouched. Each child she saw reminded her of him. Each passing train felt like a messenger carrying him closer. The villagers sometimes visited the station and whispered, "It has been too long. Maybe he has forgotten." But she always shook her head gently. "No, my son is not like that. He will return. A mother knows." Her certainty baffled them. But to her, it wasn't just hope, it was survival. And so she sat, her body in the present, but her soul living in the past. The world moved on. Seasons changed. The platform saw countless arrivals and departures. But her heart remained frozen in that one moment, the promise of a son and the faith of a mother. The story now turns darker. As the years pass, her weight begins to test the limits of her strength, her faith, and her very existence. The station had become more than a place of departure and arrival. It had become her universe. The cold concrete benches were her bed. The iron roof above her was her sky, and the roaring trains were the heartbeat of her days. Every dawn, before the sun climbed above the horizon, she would arrive at the station. Her steps were slow, her back bent, yet her eyes carried a strange brightness, as if today could be the day. She would take the same spot near the third platform, the place where the city-bound trains halted. She believed that if her son returned, it would be from there. Her ritual was precise, almost sacred. She would clean the corner of the bench with her shawl, place her small bundle beside her, a cloth bag that carried nothing but a tattered blanket and a stale piece of bread. Then she would sit, hands folded in her lap, scanning every passenger that stepped down. To strangers, she looked like an ordinary beggar. But her eyes revealed a truth no one cared to ask about, eyes that searched for a face she could never forget. The station was a world of noise. Vendors shouting, whistles blowing, children crying, announcements echoing. But to her, every sound funneled into one, the screech of an incoming train. Each whistle sent her heart racing. Her lips trembled with silent prayers. Let it be him. Please, let it be him. But when the doors opened and strangers poured out, her excitement would dissolve into a familiar ache. Again, not him. Again, only shadows. And yet she never cursed the weight. Her son had promised he would return, and she believed promises were not meant to be broken. On lonely afternoons, she would talk to herself, though in her mind she was speaking to him. Do you still remember me, my son? Do you eat well? Have you grown taller than me now? Did you buy that house you promised? Sometimes, when children stared at her curiously, she would smile and whisper, "My son was just like you once." He had the same eyes, the same way of running around. To others, she looked mad. To herself, she was simply keeping her son alive through words. The daily commuters knew her. They passed her every morning, every evening, and she became part of the scenery, like the ticket counters, like the broken clock on the wall. Some pitied her. A few offered coins, which she never accepted. "I am not here to beg," she would say softly. "I am waiting for my son." Others mocked her. "Old fool," they whispered. "He must be dead or long gone. Why does she waste her life here?" But their words bounced off her faith. A mother's love is stronger than ridicule, stronger than time itself. Seasons changed. Summers burned her skin, winters froze her bones, monsoons drenched her thin shawl. Still she sat. Her hair, once black, turned silver. Her face, once lined with hope, now bore deep wrinkles. Yet her eyes remained unchanged, the same searching, expectant eyes that refused to give up. Children who had once seen her at the station grew into adults, yet she remained in the same place. To them, she was eternal and ageless figure, waiting, always waiting. There were nights when even her faith trembled. Nights when she lay on the cold floor, stomach empty, body shivering, whispering, "Has God forgotten me too?" Tears would slip into her hairline as she closed her eyes. But when the first train of dawn arrived, hope would awaken with it. "He will come today," she would tell herself. "I must not lose heart." It was as though the station itself fed her hope. The trains whispering to her soul that her wait was not in vain. In her dreams, her son always returned. Sometimes he came running, suitcase in hand, shouting, "Mama." Other times he came quietly, kneeling before her, saying, "Forgive me for making you wait so long." She would wake up smiling, believing for a brief moment that the dream was real. And then the cruel dawn would remind her that dreams dissolve, but reality endures. Still, she never stopped dreaming. For without dreams, what else could she hold on to? That bench became her shrine. It was where her faith rested, where her life unfolded. She believed that if she ever left it, her son might come and miss her. So she stayed, day after day, year after year. To the world, it was just a wooden bench with peeling paint. To her, it was the bridge between her and her boy, the place where a promise was still alive. And so the years bled into each other, the station clock ticking away her life, second by second. But what happens when time refuses to reward faith? What happens when the world begins to forget you, even as you remember it all? Her wait, once a story of love, was about to become a test of survival, dignity, and heartbreak. The old lady's wait was no longer just her story. It had become a part of the town's daily rhythm. People noticed her, judged her, pitied her, even mocked her. Yet, through every word and glance, she clung to her purpose, to wait for her son. Every evening, when the station was busiest, she became the subject of hushed voices. That's the mad woman who waits for a son who will never return. How many years has it been now? 20, 30. She's wasting her life. Children tugged at their mothers' saris, asking, "Why doesn't that grandma go home?" The mothers only shook their heads and whispered, "She has no home. She only has this weight." Some laughed at her, calling her foolish. Others shook their heads with pity, but none truly understood the depth of her love. Cruelty often came disguised as curiosity. Teenagers would toss pebbles near her feet to see if she reacted. Vendors mocked her for not buying food, taunting, "What are you waiting for? The train that brings your son with a feast." She never argued. She never raised her voice. She simply closed her eyes and whispered a prayer for them and for herself. The world thought her silence meant weakness, but only she knew it was strength. Not all were cruel. Some souls tried to ease her suffering. A chai seller often left a cup of tea near her bench without asking for money. A young woman once placed a shawl around her shoulders on a freezing night. Once, a schoolboy placed half his lunch in her lap and ran away shyly. She looked at the food, tears welling in her eyes. She didn't eat it immediately. First, she whispered, "Bless you, my child," as though she was blessing her own son. But though these acts warmed her, they never distracted her from her true purpose. Charity could fill her stomach for a night. Only her son's return could fill the emptiness of her soul. Her struggles were endless. Hunger gnawed at her stomach more often than food did. Winters left her fingers numb, her lips cracked, her body trembling. In the monsoon rains, her thin blanket soaked through. But she held it around herself anyway, as if it could shield her from the world's harshness. She survived not because her body was strong, but because her love was stronger than her weakness. Every bite she took, every breath she drew, was for one reason alone: to be alive when her son returned. Despite her suffering, she carried dignity like a crown. When people tossed coins at her feet, mistaking her for a beggar, she would push them back with trembling hands. "I am not here to beg," she would say in a steady voice. "I am waiting for my son." Her poverty could strip her of comfort, but it could not strip her of pride. She was not a beggar. She was a mother. And mothers did not beg for anything but their children's love. At times, railway guards tried to chase her away. "You can't sleep here, old woman," they scolded. "Go find a shelter." She would fold her hands and plead, "Please, Sahib, what if my son returns and I am not here? He will not find me." Where else can I go? Some guards turned away, frustrated but moved. Others shrugged, muttering, "She won't live long anyway." But she always returned the next day. No law, no order, no command could separate her from the station where her promise was rooted. The years stole more than her youth. They stole her place in society. Her relatives stopped visiting. Old neighbors stopped recognizing her. She had outlived her generation, outlasted friendships, outgrown the ties that once connected her to the village. Now she belonged to no one, and no one belonged to her except the son who lived only in her faith. Isolation could break most souls, but for her, it only sharpened her determination. If the whole world abandoned her, so be it. Her son would not. One day, a kind traveler sat beside her and asked softly, "Mother, how long have you waited?" She smiled faintly, her eyes distant. "I have stopped counting the years. I only count trains now." The man frowned, pity filling his heart. "And what if your son never comes?" Her answer was simple, unshakable. "Then I will keep waiting." A mother's duty is not to doubt, but to believe. The man had no reply. He touched her feet in respect before leaving. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not pitied, not mocked, but respected. Hope is a strange companion. It kept her alive, but it also chained her to sorrow. There were days when she envied those who had closure, even those who had lost loved ones forever. At least their hearts had an end, while hers remained open, raw, endlessly bleeding. But whenever despair tried to consume her, she would hear her son's words again. "Wait for me, Mama. I'll come back." And that was enough. Enough to keep her rooted to the bench. Enough to keep her spirit from collapsing entirely. The society judged her, pitied her, even mocked her, but none of it mattered. For her, there was only one question that repeated every single day. Will this be the day he returns? Her story was no longer about years. It was about survival. And soon, survival itself would become a cruel test. Time is merciless. It strips away strength, beauty, and even memory. Yet, the old lady's heart clung to one thing that time could not steal: hope. Her body had become fragile, her movements slow. Her once steady hands now trembled when she held her shawl against the cold. Her back bent further each year, making her appear as though the weight of the sky itself rested upon her shoulders. Her eyesight blurred, but she insisted she would still recognize her son the moment she saw him. Each breath became heavier, each step more difficult, but still she arrived at the station daily. The guards, vendors, and passengers began to wonder how a frail body could withstand such punishment. The answer was simple: love makes the weak strong. By now, children who once saw her on their way to school had become adults with families of their own. Some returned after years and were stunned to find her still sitting in the same spot. "She's still here," they whispered. "How is that possible?" To them, she had become a symbol unchanging, eternal, like the old clock tower at the station. But to her, it was not eternity. It was every single day lived with the same question. Is today the day? Sometimes, passengers resembled her son. A young man stepping off a train, his hair falling across his forehead, just so. Another, carrying a bag like her son once had. Her heart would leap, her voice would tremble. My child. But each time reality struck. They were strangers, faces unfamiliar. The hope that soared in her chest would crash into silence. And yet, she never let go of the dream. Each mistaken face only convinced her that the real one was still on its way. In her final years, her prayers became more urgent. Oh God, keep me alive just one more day, just until I see him. Do not take me before I hold him again. At night, beneath the stars visible through the station's iron roof, she would whisper, I am not asking for riches or comfort or even health. I am only asking for one thing, a glimpse of my son before I leave this world. Faith was her last companion. Without it, she would crumble. The station itself grew modern with time. New signboards were painted. Old trains were replaced with faster ones. The walls were plastered with fresh advertisements. But amid all that change, she remained unchanged. The bench was still hers, the weight still hers. People said, the world has moved forward. Why hasn't she? But they did not understand. Her world had stopped the day her son left. Back in her village, her story became legend. Elders told children about the mother who still sat waiting for her lost boy. Some said it was a tale of madness. Others said it was the purest form of love. But regardless of opinion, everyone knew one truth. Her devotion was unmatched, unshakable, unending. Occasionally, travelers stopped to speak with her. Why do you wait here, mother? For my son, she would reply softly. When did he leave? She would close her eyes, struggling to count the years. So long ago that my hair was still black, but he promised to return. And a mother does not forget promises. Some travelers wept silently at her words. Some walked away, unsettled by the weight of her faith. But to her, every ear that heard her story was one more witness to her love. As her body weakened, her dreams became more vivid. She often saw her son standing on the platform, smiling, reaching for her hand. Sometimes she awoke, reaching into the air, whispering his name. For a moment, she would believe he had truly returned, only to find herself alone again. Still, she considered the dreams as signs, messages from beyond the veil of reality. If I see him in my dreams, then surely I will see him in life. Loneliness became her shadow. She had no one to share her thoughts with, no one to lean on. The people who once pitied her now barely noticed her. She had faded into the background of life, like an old painting gathering dust. Yet inside her heart, she burned with a fire brighter than before. She may have been invisible to the world, but she was still alive in the eyes of her son, wherever he was. In rare moments, even her faith faltered. What if he has forgotten me? What if he is gone forever? What if I wasted my life? The questions tore at her heart like knives. But before despair could consume her, she would place her hand over her chest and whisper, "No, a mother knows. He is alive. He will come." Her certainty returned, stubborn and unshakable, like a flame that refused to die, even in a storm. Her body was nearing its end, but her faith was eternal. The world had changed. Generations had passed. Seasons had written themselves on her face, but her soul was still waiting, still believing. The climax was near. The station was about to witness the final test of her love and the last chapter of her endless wait. The years had hollowed her body, yet her eyes still shone with the light of faith. Every wrinkle on her face told a story of waiting. Every breath carried the rhythm of a single promise. "Wait for me, Mama. I'll come back." It was an ordinary morning at the station, or so it seemed. Vendors shouted as usual, trains screeched and groaned. Announcements echoed through the cracked speakers. But something in the air felt different to her. She could not explain it. Perhaps it was the stillness of the sky, or the way her heart beat louder than usual. She whispered to herself, "Today will be the day. I can feel it. My son is coming." For the first time in years, she straightened her shawl carefully, smoothing its torn edges as if preparing to look her best. She patted her thinning hair and pressed her lips together, wanting to greet him with dignity. That afternoon, a long-distance train pulled into the platform. It was not unusual, but to her, the whistle felt like a call. The screech of brakes, like an announcement, meant only for her. Her hands shook as she gripped the edge of the bench, her eyes scanning every window, every door. One by one, passengers stepped down, families with bags rushing to taxis, young men carrying briefcases, children skipping beside their mothers. And then she saw him. Among the crowd was a man, perhaps in his 30s, tall, broad-shouldered, with tired eyes and a familiar way of walking. Her heart skipped, her lips trembled. "My son, my child." The resemblance was uncanny. His face bore the same lines, his posture the same tilt of shoulders as the boy she had raised. She rose to her feet, her frail body trembling, and whispered his name. The man turned, startled by the sound. For a moment, their eyes met. Hers were filled with tears, a mother's recognition burning through decades. His were filled with confusion, then pity. He shook his head gently. "I'm sorry, Ma, I'm not your son." The words shattered her like glass. Her knees buckled, and she fell back onto the bench. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she pressed her palms to her face. The man, moved by her pain, bent down and placed his hand on her shoulder. "Are you all right? Do you need help?" She shook her head weakly. "No, I just thought you were someone else. Forgive me." He wanted to say more, But the crowd swept him away, leaving her alone again, more alone than ever before. That night, she sat under the dim station lamp, trembling with exhaustion. For the first time, doubt hit her like a wave she could not withstand. Have I been wrong all these years? Have I waited for nothing? Has God played a cruel game with me? Her chest ached, her breath came shallow, but still she whispered through tears, "No," he promised. "A son does not forget." Her heart was torn between two worlds, faith and despair, like a candle flickering in a storm. The next morning, the same man who had resembled her son returned to the station. He carried a small bag of food and a flask of tea. "Mother," he said softly, kneeling before her, "please eat something. You look so weak." She looked at him, her eyes glistening. For a moment, she wanted to pretend he truly was her son, pretend her wait was over. But she shook her head. "I cannot eat until my boy returns. Thank you, child. You are kind." The man's throat tightened. He placed the food beside her and left quietly, unable to bear the weight of her faith. Days turned into weeks. Her body, once fueled by stubborn love, began to betray her. Her legs could no longer carry her from the bench. Her voice grew faint, her breath shallow. But her eyes never stopped searching the trains. Even as her vision blurred, she squinted at every face, whispering, "Is it him? Is it my son?" One evening, as the crimson sun bled across the horizon, a train pulled into the platform. The golden light washed over her frail figure, making her look like a ghost of faith itself. She struggled to rise, gripping the bench for support. Her body swayed, her lips trembling. He will come now, I know it. But as passengers spilled out, her knees gave way. She fell to the ground, gasping, clutching her chest. People rushed to her side, but she waved them away weakly. Her gaze was fixed on the crowd, still searching, still hopping. As her breath grew faint, she whispered into the air, "My child, I kept my promise. I waited. Why did you not keep yours?" A single tear slid down her wrinkled cheek. Her hand reached out toward the empty space before her, as though grasping for her son one last time. And then, with a sigh as soft as the evening wind, her hand fell to the ground. The station clock struck 7. For the first time in decades, the bench stood empty. The wait was over, but not because her son returned. It ended because her soul could no longer hold the burden of hope. Yet her story did not die with her. The station remembered. The people remembered. And her endless wait became a tale whispered through generations, a story of love too pure, too tragic, to ever fade. The night she left this world, the station fell quieter than usual. The same place that had echoed with footsteps, train whistles, and hurried lives, now seemed to hold its breath. Something was missing, someone was missing. The bench, the old shawl, the fragile figure that had become a permanent part of the station's identity. For years, travelers had seen her and carried on with their lives. She was the background of their journeys, a reminder that not all departures have arrivals. Now that she was gone, the emptiness was louder than the trains themselves. The man who once resembled her son returned the next morning, holding another bag of food. But when he reached the bench, he froze. The bench was empty. Only her worn shawl lay folded neatly, as though waiting for her return. He dropped the bag to the ground, his chest tightening. No, not like this. For a moment, he felt crushed by guilt, as if he had not done enough, not said enough. He sat on the bench, placing his hand on the shawl. Tears welled in his eyes. "Mother," he whispered, "I couldn't be your son, but I wish I was. I wish I had stayed longer, listened more. You deserved that." Word spread quickly among vendors, porters, and passengers. The old lady who had waited decades was gone. Some wept openly, others whispered prayers. Even the station master, who had once considered her nothing more than an odd presence, felt a heavy weight in his chest. They placed flowers on the bench. Candles flickered at night, small flames fighting against the vast darkness. The station had lost more than a passenger. It had lost its soul. Within weeks, her tale began traveling beyond the station. A local newspaper wrote about her, the woman who waited a lifetime. Soon, travelers carried the story to other towns, other cities. Strangers who had never seen her began speaking of her as if they had known her. Her faith, her patience, her unshakable love, it became a legend, a living reminder of promises kept and broken, of the fragile strength within the human heart. Years later, people still told her story. Parents whispered it to their children while waiting for trains. Once, there was a mother who never gave up on her child. The story became more than a tragedy. It became a mirror for sons who had forgotten their mothers, for daughters who left promises unfulfilled, for anyone who believed time would always wait. The old lady's life and her endless wait asked one question that echoed across generations. Whom have you left waiting? Though she was gone, her spirit never left. Passengers swore that on quiet nights, when the station was nearly empty, they could still feel her presence. Some claimed they saw a frail figure in a shawl, sitting at the bench, eyes searching the arriving train. Whether it was imagination, memory, or something beyond this world, it did not matter. What mattered was that she remained a silent guardian of promises, of patience, of love. Her life was simple. She had no riches, no fame, no possessions to leave behind. And yet, she left something more powerful than wealth, a story that pierced the hearts of millions. Her son never returned, but in a way he did. Every traveler who carried her memory became her child. Every listener who shed a tear at her story fulfilled the bond she longed for. Her wait ended, not with his return, but with the world remembering her sacrifice. She was just one woman, an old lady on a forgotten bench at a crowded station. But her love was vast enough to shake the hearts of generations. So if you hear this story today, don't let it be just another tale. Call your mother. Keep your promises. Don't let love wait too long. Because one day, when the benches of life stand empty, it won't be time that you'll regret. It will be the chances you never took, the embraces you never gave, and the promises you never kept. Rose the end. Her story began with hope, grew with waiting, ended with heartbreak, and lives forever as a message.